you're a contractor. This is what you do. We don't care about your opinion on anything else. And that's fine. And to some degree, everybody has a lane, right? You know,
Yeah.
like if you're building a company, everybody needs to kind of know this is the lane you're staying, yada, yada. But there's a way to show that people have value in terms of just having those conversations and be like, hey, you know, we really need mission critical stuff to be done right now. Let's have a meeting over happy hour and let's talk about some of these ideas. It wasn't like that at all. It was just like, do your shit, get out, you know, and then we'll see you tomorrow. I think because I pushed back a bit on that and I was trying to innovate, you know, they kind of were like, yeah, we'll probably go a different direction. I was like, that's fine. You know, this isn't the place for me. And so as that severance was starting to run out, I had to make the decision. And I told my wife, whatever, I'll hang TVs. I don't care what it is. I'll hang people's TVs. I'll figure out, you know, what I want to do, but I can't go back to feeling this way. And yeah, and so I started, and 2 weeks in, as the story goes, you know, I get a call from somebody connected to Joe, and
Yes, another story.
yeah, and that launches my career from there. That launches the company, and that's pretty much it. You know, everything else is history.
Let's talk about Joe Rogan, and we talk about that you built Joe Rogan's studio. That's pretty big, phenomenal work. And how did you get to that gig? I know the guy called, and you didn't have any idea who is Joe. You just show up and says, "I want you to do this."
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story because it was all happenstance. You know, it was 20 it was August of 2020, beginning of August, and people were probably gonna, well, not now anymore. I was gonna say they probably chastise us for this, but my wife and I were at a distillery at the time, and so we were just, you know, getting some drinks, and my buddy calls me. He's like, "Hey, I want to introduce you to Joe, and he needs a studio." So really, without going into depth, it just turned into this thing where the opportunity presented itself. I had about 2.5 weeks to get it done.
2.5 weeks
2.5
to do a
weeks
studio
to do
for
the
that level.
yeah. And it wasn't
Wow.
perfect. I mean, you know, when we were talking about this the other day, you know, like it's not anywhere near as elevated as our spaces are now. You know, it was just I had to have that tunnel vision of like, okay, this is what I have to do. I've got this much time. I've got to compact all that. I've got to do procurement. I've got to pick up all the materials. I've got to, you know, get the space ready for production. I've got to do this, that. And so, so yeah, it was a true call to arms because I've always been a very scrappy individual, you know, and my wife is the more methodical one. She loves a very refined plan. She likes it to be
Structure, yeah.
structured. And any entrepreneur will tell you that you will fail if you have too much of both, right?
Yeah.
You have to have the vision, you have to have the structure, and then you have to somehow marry those two things to work very well. And sometimes it takes more than one person. And I was just one person. And I had the vision and I had the structure as well. It was just the time. And if you don't have all three of those things, something's going to suffer, whether it's quality or your own lifestyle or whatever it is. And so it definitely was my like quality of sleep. I worked like literally from probably about 6:37 a.m. till usually, it reminds me of Soundshed 1.0. It was like usually till about 2 in the morning.
Wow.
And I you know, the fortunate thing is I never had to sleep at the studio to get it done. I would just get up. It was nice to just go sleep in my own bed, but then come back and do it all again. And it was calling anybody I knew to be like, hey, I need your help. I need you to be here. I just need you to do this, that, just hold this. And it was really that call to arms that brought a lot of people together that made me feel like that same experience of being in a band or building my first studio or working at WeWork, like all those different things. Everything we did was a culmination of that feeling, that intrinsic feeling I had during those times. And I think that's what kind of kept me moving forward. And I'm the type of individual who I get this very grandiose idea of something and I just go all in. Whether it's Joe, whether it's Rami, whether it's whoever it is,
You're just gonna go and
I,
finish.
I just have to relentlessly do it because I've always believed in that. I've always believed that like your word is your bond and you have to stick with that. And if you don't, then what do
A
you?
lot of people, they don't
Yeah,
believe what you believe. You have seen it during your career. You got screwed
right,
by so many people. I got that, but I always says the man of his word, and then you
right.
finish that, and at the end is gonna pay off. But how Joe reacted it to 2 weeks that you finished it on time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we finished it on time, and I think that's, he was so appreciative, and I don't think that I could have asked for a better first client, not because of who he was, his status and who he was in the industry. I think it was because he truly appreciated it, even given some of the things that weren't perfect, even given, it was really this whole scrappy operation. He could look at it and say, oh, wow, like, thank you for getting this done, and not making excuses. And I think any client of that caliber is going to feel the same way.
Yeah.
Some clients are going to be a lot more nitpicky about, like, oh, why isn't it perfect? But again, he was insightful enough, or he was, he could see that that amount of time was going to be probably impossible for most people. And so that really hit home when he was like, yeah, this is great, this is dope, this is really cool. And it definitely helped me appreciate what we had done, because for those 2.5 weeks I hadn't slept. So I was just so in my head about, like, oh my God, like, this isn't perfect. This isn't perfect. Like, I needed this to be like exactly what I saw in my head. But somebody who was working with me at the time, who's still working with us now, he just told me, like, hey, you gotta sit back and appreciate what you've done, or else you're never gonna be able to, like, truly see beyond your frustration of, like, the process and everything. So it did. It took a little time for me to be like, okay, I can breathe again. Um, but that taught me a lot. It taught me how to accept my own deficiencies. It kind of taught me how to accept that I needed help in certain areas, and accept the fact that someone is going to be better than me, and I need to find those someones to be able to really make this into something else. And so, yeah, I mean, after I got the tag from Joe on Instagram, it was just, it all signs pointed in that direction. And it was also learning how to accept the brutal reality that people are going to hate what you do.